Welcome, everybody. It's NHL action, and tomorrow the quarterfinals get started. I'm talking once again with Ross Benjamin, NHL analyst and handicapper. Ross, first and foremost, thanks for being back with us. Tomorrow the action gets going on the ice. Last year you did amazingly well in the playoffs, and if you would, let us know and our viewers know what your record was last year for the playoff time.
Well, thank you, Mike, for giving me the time to do so. I was documented by a credible and independent source, which I'm not going to mention because it would be a conflict of interest with SBR. So, respectfully, I'm not going to bring up their name. But last year during the postseason, 34 and 20, 63%, at an average of 1 unit per play. That's $1,552 were made for $100 bettors. Those selections also came at an average money line price of -106. Mike, that's important, as you know. A lot of so-called handicappers out there like to give out selections of -180 to -220. They're not doing you any favors, folks. There's no value there. And if you lose one of those games, you have to win 3 just to make it up or be at a profit level. So, again, it was a successful 2015 NHL playoffs, Mike, and I look for more of the same in 2016.
Yeah, that definitely spells profitability, and that's interesting, and I'm glad you broke that down for the viewers because, you know, with hockey, it's a whole different monster when you're betting it, and you go on those high money lines and you take a loss, just like you said, now you're coming from behind. So breaking it down to units is actually the best way to do it. There's an interesting article, viewers, on our picks page that you need to read. Ross has a Stanley Cup handicap method that has been very successful, obviously, as it was last year, and it's broken down into 4 segments. The first one being special teams, which is based on power play goals and power play defense, killing the power play. So Ross, if you will, let's get into special teams and let us know how that helps you to decide the winner.
Well, it's something I call the special teams efficiency rating, Mike, and it goes a long way. And you'll be surprised, going back to that statement, you'll be surprised how this correlates with a team's place in the standings. And it also is a good indicator when looking for underdog value and overvalued teams. Now, having said that, the calculation, as Mike just alluded to, quite simple. You take a team's power play conversion rate percentage and you add it to their penalty killing percentage. For example, Washington this season, the top team in the NHL, they converted on 21.9% of their power plays. They also killed off 85.1% of their power plays against them. And that equates, when you add those two numbers up, 21.9, 85.1, it comes to a sum of 107. That's where I have their efficiency rating. And currently, with the 16 teams in the NHL playoffs, Washington is #1 in the East in that category. While Anaheim, believe it or not, is the top team in that category overall and best in the West at 110.2. And then you look at the other side of the coin, Mike, when I talk about overvalued teams, the Florida Panthers are the number 2 seed overall in the Eastern Conference, yet they're last in the East in this particular category going into the playoffs. And when I say that, let me be clear. I've only included in my article and through this discussion the 16 teams that have qualified for the postseason.
That's very interesting, especially with the Ducks, because I would think maybe the Stars or even the St. Louis Blues would be before the Ducks. But, you know, I like that breakdown because the Florida Panthers, even though a number 2 seed, they could fall out early and get knocked out early because of the stats that you're putting out. Now, the even strength rating, if you will, break that down for us, and how does this come into play?
Pretty simple, Mike. It's more or less an example. It's basically what a player's plus minus rating would be, but it's just based on a team concept, meaning how a team does at even strength. And you take the goal differential, the goals for, again, and you subtract that from the goals against while a team is playing at even strength. And this season, it's no surprise the Washington Capitals, #1 overall at a plus 43 rating. In the West, we're looking at the LA Kings, who are plus 35. That's the best mark of the 8 teams in the Western Conference playoffs. And you might be surprised to know the Detroit Red Wings, a team that barely qualified for the playoffs, but they're still a playoff team, they were -8 in even strength goal differential this season. Something to really keep in mind, especially when you're looking at if Detroit might be a home favorite during the course of these playoffs.
Wow, this is interesting. I like this breakdown. Now, the power index number, how do you come up with that? I mean, what factors into making the power index number?
I'm glad you asked that, Mike. It's a simple calculation. We've already discussed the equations for the special teams efficiency rating and the even strength rating. Basically, Mike, just adding those two numbers up, a team special teams rating plus its even strength rating gives me a power index, and that indicates to me a team's overall performance. Once again, Washington, no surprise, far and away the best in the NHL. And when you look at the fact that they won the President's Trophy, accumulating the most points during the regular season by a long margin, it's no surprise in that regard. Is there a 150 power index? The top in the West for me is the LA Kings at 136.4, and dead last of all the 16 playoff teams, once again, the Detroit Red Wings come in at 92.4.
Wow. Wow. Now, the last and certainly not the least factor into your system is the goaltending at crunch time. And this really interests me because obviously this is when, the cream rises to the top as far as the best in the league. Break this one down and what factors into the goaltending at crunch time.
Well, Mike, I do the goaltending factoring as far as the handicapping goes in NHL playoffs, similar to what you like to do. I use my professional intuition and and experience in this regard. I mean, it's pretty much an inexact science. I mean, who cares if a guy has a .932 save percentage during the year, and then he just has a history of falling on his face in the playoffs. Case in point, Marc-Andre Fleury of the Pittsburgh Penguins seems to have extremely impressive numbers during the regular season over the past few years, yet he's the main culprit as to why Pittsburgh has bowed out early in the NHL playoffs in recent years. And then you look at two goaltenders like Jonathan Quick and Corey Crawford. I don't care what they did during the regular season. I look at recently what they've accomplished in the NHL playoffs. Both of these guys were on two Stanley Cup winners. Each guy played on three conference finals. As a matter of fact, Quick in 2012, 13, and 14, and Corey Crawford in each of the last three Western Conference finals. Experience, and also not only experience, but success in those situations goes a long way, Mike. When goaltenders reach the NHL level, in my opinion, they're all capable of going on very hot extended streaks, or they wouldn't be an NHL goaltender. However, at this time of year, I look at what goes on above the neck just as much as I look at the physical ability below the neck. And another guy to keep an eye on here, Braden Holtby of the Washington Capitals, 49-17 during the regular season and 66 starts. Now, having said that, granted, he played on the best team in hockey, hell of a team in front of him. But by the same token, 922 save percentage doesn't lie. And also, Mike, this guy was spectacular in last year's playoffs, even though Washington bowed out in the conference semifinals.
Now, let me ask you that. With that being said about Washington, and with you doing this system as you've done, and obviously it has been profitable. Washington has been known in years past to have great regular seasons, but they don't bring that same intensity into the playoffs. Do you think they get over that hump this year?
I do, Mike. I really do. I mean, I hate betting chalks. Okay, so I'm probably not going to make a wager on this, but I wouldn't bet against them either. I mean, according to the NHL betting odds right now at the Greek.com, we're looking at Washington as a plus 350, which is a clear-cut favorite to win the Stanley Cup. So at that price, that's not a bad price for a team that had this kind of year, President's Trophy winner. Your point is well taken. The St. Louis Blues are another team, Mike, right? I mean, in the Western Conference, tremendous regular seasons every year, and they seem to bow out in the first rounds. I think the last three seasons now, and had the home ice advantage in all three of those series. So yeah, it's something to take into account. You look at Washington last year, Mike. They lost in the conference semifinals to a very good New York Rangers club. And they went 7 games and lost game 7 in sudden death overtime. They were that close. So it's not like they didn't perform well last year. They just, ran into a very good team, and it was a series that can go either way. I really like their chances this year, though, Mike.
Yeah, and I was talking to several people about this, and I think that Washington certainly addresses that in the locker room, and I think this team is definitely more focused this year than any year in the past, so I like them as a favorite myself. Okay, viewers, you heard it. This is a very interesting method that Ross uses, and obviously 34-20 last year, 63%. That spells profitability, so read the articles, and throughout the NHL playoffs, check Ross's daily articles with his picks, and check out the videos as well, because I believe him and I are going to be cashing some tickets during NHL. Ross, thanks so much for being with us. Good luck, my man, this NHL playoff season, and beat your book and beat them hard.
Well, thank you for having me, Mike, and all the best to you as well.